Coming up on today's episode of Inside Man United, the headlines. United confirmed to be chasing two Brazilian defensive midfielders, one from Serie A in Fluminese's Andre, and of course Wolves' João Gomes. Is it time up for Ten Hag as United approach Brazil-born coach as major 5-year criticism of Ten Hag emerges? Fabrizio Romano has his say on rumours swirling that Mason Greenwood will be used as a swap for Juventus Gleison Bremer. And Ratcliffe saves £88 million duo from Man United Cull, but 2 stars doomed amid blockbuster Everton pursuit. And finally, Man United step up Jason Wilcox and Dan Ashworth moves after John Murtaugh exit. All that coming up. Hello everyone, thanks for joining me, and I am not recording this at the usual time of day. I usually record my episodes at night, so apologies for maybe the bright atmosphere here in the room and the reflection in the mirror behind me. I can't record anywhere else. This is the only kind of clean wall I have available, but unfortunately there's a mirror nailed into that wall, so I can't really change it. But without further ado, let's get into some news stories. We've got loads to cover today, and we're going to start with football transfers with a article here regarding 2 defensive midfield targets for United, with 2 Brazilians high up on the agenda. One being Fluminese's Andre, the 22-year-old Brazilian who's been doing very, very well at Fluminense, and a target with a reasonable price tag as well. And of course, João Gomes from Wolves with also a pretty reasonable price tag. Both players 22, 23, defensive midfielders, the next kind of replacements, I believe, for Casemiro. So it might be a straight shootout between the two of them. I know that Amadou Onana is in the mix as well, but you know, for 70 or 80 million, I think there is potentially better options out there than Amadou Onana for as good as he is. So it goes on to say here that United have made a return to Andre, while the club have also sounded out João Gomes football transfers has been told. But they are concrete summer targets. So there's going to be lots of targets for United. There's, of course, João Neves from Benfica. Amadou Onana is not going to disappear either. Then there is, personally, I think we should be looking at Joshua Kimmich, just because he has flexibility to play at right back and as a defensive midfielder as well. I think Paulinho absolutely has to be someone that we look at from Fulham. With Bayern Munich's kind of capitulation in the league, maybe they're not as attractive an offer as they may appear, and I think United should definitely be making a move to try and get Mr. Paulinho. Certainly when we've got the likes of Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay and other players available, there could be some swap options there. So, you know, I think there could be something in there. So they're also reporting that Arsenal have not made any direct contact with Wolves about Gomez. They don't need him. They've got Declan Rice, and with Odegaard and other players in midfield, João Gomez just will not start for Arsenal. United need Gomez a hell of a lot more than Arsenal do. They might need a replacement if Thomas Partey leaves in the summer, which no doubt he will. But I don't see him starting ahead of Declan Rice, and I don't see them playing with 2 defensive midfielders, if I'm being totally honest. But Jorginho will be moving on, I would imagine. So, you know, there might be room for him in that midfield. So Gary O'Neill's side won't entertain offers below £40 million, which is fine. 23 years of age, defensive Brazilian midfielder on the cusp of their first team. I don't think that is that's unreasonable. So they're saying, yeah, he'll be allowed to exit Man U for above €50 million. Okay, and it'll depend on whether clubs receive an offer for Pedro Neto first. Obviously, another wide attacking player that's attracting a lot of interest from the upper levels of the Premier League. And O'Neill recently bemoaned that the club were unable to strengthen their squad in January, so he's going to be loath to losing 2 of probably his strongest players. And as Mourinho said, you can't really say you've got a football team without at least one Brazilian in there. So it'd be a shame if they lost João Gomez, but you know, it is what it is. We warned the owners if we lost a few attacking players, it would make a big difference. We flagged the situation, etc. So they're not going to go cheap. That's a fact. But it says here the football transfers exclusively revealed last year that Red Devils were eyeing Andre as a possible replacement for Casemiro. And as we saw from Casemiro, I said this when I saw the warm-up game against Lens in the pre-season, that he looked like he had lead in his legs. And he does. And you can blame the tactics all you like, and there are people that can point to the isolation that a defensive midfielder does feel in a Erik Ten Hag setup. But he's just not the player he was. His steep decline from last year to this year has been quite remarkable. So it is what it is. So now the Premier League giants have come back in for the Fluminense star. So between 35 and 40 million, they're saying United could get him. So that's a pretty reasonable price for a player of his age profile and his ability. So I think there's a lot in that, and I would not be too disappointed if we did get him. And speaking of Brazilians, United looking to bring in Thiago Motta from Bologna at the moment. So a really nice article here from Team Talk covers quite a few bases in terms of the criticism of Ten Hag, his tactics, and why Thiago Motta is being sounded out. So there is obviously growing speculation about Ten Hag leaving. There was talk that he's been included in United's summer plans, that he's still being consulted with regards stuff for next season. But again, it could all be a red herring. We've seen a million times managers talk about players being an important part of the squad and they're hoping that they can come back and blah, 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 blah. And the player sold a month later or 2 months later or whenever the next window is. There is no benefit in United saying that Ten Hag is going to be leaving at the end of the season when we still have a few things to play for, namely an FA Cup. And there is still an outside chance that we can squeeze into that fifth Champions League spot. So they're definitely not going to want to disrupt Erik Ten Hag's flow, his confidence, and just want to allow him to get on with the job, which is absolutely fair enough. Just want to check if my mic is good. There was big circulation of video from Ruud Gullit with Erik Ten Hag from 5 years ago, making very similar comments about the way Ten Hag plays, and it's identical to the way we play now. Gaping holes in the midfield, allowing for teams to literally just stroll through your team and get off the amount of shots that they get off. And it was very, very interesting. So there was a lot of negativity with regards to the amount of shots that Liverpool got off in the first half, and United have conceded over 100 shots in their last 4 games, which is deplorable, but it's been like that most of the season. So the statistic also followed the concession of 28 shots on their goal against Chelsea in midweek, and it left their central midfield badly open and exposed to Liverpool breaks. And they're saying United struggles were in evidence at Ajax years earlier. So Ruud Gullit, in an interview back in 2019 with Ziggo Sports, he goes, "The annoying part about Ajax, especially in transitions, I've seen it against Bayern Munich. I've already seen it many times before. At the moment, they're taking a lot of risks, especially in midfield. And all of a sudden, you get ridiculous counters. If it gets intercepted, they can just run all the way through. You think you're taking so much risk because you want to press, but then the opposition can just run straight through your midfield." Does that sound familiar? Of course it fucking does. There has to be one player in the middle who thinks, what if? Yeah, he always secures the midfield. They were talking about Fernandinho at the time. Frankie de Jong is playing well, but you still need someone next to him. To this, Ten Hag responded, "The way we play, those are the risks we have already calculated, and I agree with you, you have to be positioned correctly." Ten Hag faced a similar criticism earlier this season with Casemiro caught high up the field. "No, that can never happen," Ten Hag explained about both holding midfielders being too high up the pitch. But he also insists that Bolsa retention is also a massive part of how he wants his side to play. And when they lose possession, that's when things get unpicked. So he needs the right personnel for the system he wants to play, and he clearly doesn't have that personnel. That's why he wants De Jong. It's maybe why he wanted Casemiro, who was at the time one of the best holding midfielders in the game, but you couldn't predict the sharp decline that he's had. Well, if you lose the ball there, every team gets killed. As such, with the pressure building on Ten Hag, there's all sorts of managers being linked, namely Gareth Southgate. I think Old Trafford should be set on fire if Gareth Southgate is given that job. It is alarming, the reports coming out that a lot of people within Ineos really rate Gareth Southgate, which I find baffling. Despite how far he's gotten England in different international tournaments. Look at Gareth Southgate's record when he's played any team within the top 10. I think it's 23 matches, 4 wins, and the rest are draws and losses. It's something like that. So apologies if I've got that wrong, but it's poor. Neither Southgate or Nagelsmann can take over until after the Euros. So I can't see them going for either of those managers when you've got an entire summer transfer window that you have to take care of, unless both those managers have been tapped up and have agreed to join and they've already put plans together. But I can't imagine from what is a very important Euros for both of those managers, for both of those countries. So reports in Italy now state that the club have a growing admiration for Bologna coach Thiago Motta, who's worked wonders with the Serie A club. And obviously Bologna also the home of Joshua Zirkzee, the striker United have been linked with all season. So if we were to get Zirkzee and we brought in Thiago Motta, there is no manager better placed to get the best out of Zirkzee as well. Italian publication La Repubblica claim officials from United have put in a request to Bologna asking for information about Motta and what it would take to prize him away from the Serie A club. Now, listen, that doesn't mean that Ten Hag is definitely gone. All sides always have contingency for managers in case something happens. Anything can happen outside of the blue. Outside the realms of what you think could happen out of the blue. So his current deal expires at the end of the current season, with Juventus also reportedly sounding him out as a replacement. So they could offer a greater salary than Juve. Of course they will. And Bologna owner Joey Saputo had offered Motta a deal to 2026, but with a series of clubs on his trails, those talks broken down, and it's now accepted the 41-year-old will move on. Will United be the next home of Thiago Motta? Who knows? But I have no doubt that he's certainly in the mix. So another story here from One Football with Fabrizio Romano weighing in on his understanding of United's interest in Gleison Bremer, the Juventus Brazilian centre-half, 27-year-old who seems to be doing quite well. There was talk that United could be using Mason Greenwood as a make-weight in a swap deal with Gleison Bremer. And Fabrizio Romano has kind of moved to squash those rumours, saying he's rubbish reports that Mason Greenwood could join Juventus this summer, and says United's interest in Gleison Bremer has no connection to the Englishman. This is according to Football Transfers. And in his detailed analysis, he did say, I don't think Juventus will go for Mason Greenwood. From what I hear, they have different options in those positions. It's not a priority for them. And they have Federico Chiesa there as well, who I don't think has done as well this year as he has last year. And Juventus are quite a boring defensive team. That's the way Allegri likes to play. So I don't think he's ever going to be utilising the abilities of his front line as well as maybe more attacking-minded managers could. So he says, at the moment, I am not aware of any contact between Juventus and Greenwood. But there is very clear interest from United on Bremer. He goes on to say, United's interest in Gleison Bremer is not linked to Greenwood, but there is... His understanding is that United definitely are looking at Gleison Bremer. Now, the talk is that he's going to cost anywhere between 50 and 60 million euro. He's 27 years of age. He's only made 4 appearances for the Brazilian national team. Now, Brazil have always had a fairly strong complement of defenders. It's difficult to break into a back four for Brazil. But at the age of 27, to have only made 4 appearances is concerning. He spent most of his career in Serie A. He's never played La Liga. He's never played the Premiership. And to me, bringing in a player at the age of 27 who hasn't really pushed his way into the international setup and has only ever really plied his trade in Serie A, and you're looking to pay 60 million quid, that to me is absolutely bananas when you think that you can get younger players to train them to be the kind of player that you want. Now, the good thing about Gleison Bremer is that he is very robust. He's big, he's strong, and Ten Hag did talk about needing more robust players, that a lot of the squad are quite injury prone. They can't hack the packed schedule. Bremer's played 30 of 31 games. The only other game he missed was due to yellow cards having been picked up. The guy doesn't get injured. He's always fit and can be relied upon. However, that is not enough in terms of getting a £60 million move to a club that has ambitions of winning the Champions League and the Premiership. To me, this Gleison Bremer deal would be not very good. Now, I'm thinking of doing an episode during the week on Gleison Bremer, taking a closer look at the type of player he is and whether he'd suit United and whether it's the type of player that we want. To me, he is a bit of a Brazilian Harry Maguire. He doesn't carry the ball well. He doesn't dribble well. His passing isn't particularly good, but he is a bit of a brick wall and it's tough to get through him, and he's rarely injured. We already have players like that, and we're looking to get rid of them because they're not good enough. And I think Gleison Bremer is going to be a carbon copy of that. But the links are certainly there. They are true. I just hope United go for the likes of Jared Branthwaite, Antonio Silva, Jean-Claire Todibo, and others in that fit. But we'll see. But Greenwood will not be used as a swap for Gleison Bremer. Another article here about Ratcliffe saving 88 million duo from United Cull. Apparently, Victor Lindelof, they want to keep him because they think he's a good backup. I just don't understand the sense in this. There was talk of a £15 million move to AC Milan. I was wanting that to happen. They're just... he's just not fucking good enough, okay? Get rid of him. I mean, listen, he's been a good servant, but he's just not good enough. And when you look at, Chelsea's back line, they have amazing talent. They just can't stay fit. You look at City's back line, they've got 8 first-team players. Any 8 of their defenders would walk into most teams' back 4. And we can't have the like of Victor Lindelof there as a backup. He's just not good enough. He isn't good enough. No doubt he might be a Premier League standard player, but he's just not good enough. It's absolutely boiling my piss that we're going to be keeping him, but... Listen, let's look into what they're saying here. So it's Victor Lindelof and Lisandro Martinez and Victor Kamwala. Obviously, he's done so well in that Liverpool game, got man of the match. So that does ease United's bank account with regards what they're going to have to spend for recruitments in the summer. I hope Willie Kamwala is given a fair shake next season and we bring in 1, if not 2. I thought we needed 3. If we're losing Maguire, we're losing Rafael Varane, and we're going to be losing Johnny Evans and potentially Victor Lindelof, we will need to get at least 3 centre-halves, I believe, at a minimum 2, but 3 to be comfortable. And I'd like a centre-half that maybe has the ability to play in other positions. If Lisandro Martinez is fit, he can play in at left-back, he can play as defensive centre midfield. Jared Branthwaite is a left-footed centre-half who can, take over for Martinez when he's unfit. If we get Jared Branthwaite, that's not good news for Lisandro Martinez because Jared Branthwaite will not be a substitute. And that, to me, will not be good news for Lisandro Martinez. He's missed an awful lot of games since he's come. He's missed 43 games for United since signing last year. That is a huge amount. And I don't think the Ineos board are comfortable relying on his fitness to mount a credible Premier League campaign. He just could be another Ledley King, the way he was for Spurs. So we'll see. So Ratcliffe wants to use his huge financial power to help United agree several marquee signings during the next transfer window. And it looks like Branthwaite is one that we could be getting for less than 70 million. There's talk of Everton's woes with their financial troubles, the fines they're receiving, the difficulty that they're in, that they will need to make sales. And Branthwaite would be pure FFP profit. And they'll need to get rid of him quickly as well, I think, to meet deadlines. So it is going to work at United's favour. And it looks like United are leading the chase for Jared Branthwaite. But as per Football Insider, Ratcliffe has now taken a look at centre-back options and decided to save Lindelof and Martinez. Martinez, obviously, because he's a huge talent, and when he is fit and available, he is one of the best players and probably the first player on the team sheet, now next to Kobbie Mainoo. But Lindelof has been affected by some injuries recently in the last while, and they're looking to keep him. I don't understand why. I don't think he's good enough, but United are also going to lose Johnny Evans. They're probably going to lose Harry Maguire. They're definitely going to lose Varane. And it looks like Lindelof is going to be kept if he's happy enough playing second fiddle, which he might, because he's not going to join a bigger club than United at this stage of his career. So it looks like we could be keeping the Iceman, but maybe they're going to be saving the money that they would have spent on another centre-half by keeping Lindelof on the bench, and they can put that into, a striker or, another couple of midfielders, because Branthwaite and João Neves from Benfica, if we get them, will be expensive. And between the pair of them, they're probably going to cost us anywhere between 150 and 175 million just for the two of them. And then we've got defenders to buy, a striker. I wouldn't be surprised to see United spend, they're probably going to spend north of 300 million this summer once they get the outgoings in place as well. Finally, as you're all probably aware of at this stage, Mr. John Murta has departed and left the building, with United now probably in place to ramp up their pursuit of Jason Wilcox and Dan Ashworth after Murtaugh's exit. Murtaugh being the director of football at the club, with him gone. That's a gaping hole, particularly going into this summer's transfer business. And there's talk that Dan Ashworth won't have a say and won't have any influence over United's summer business because they still haven't sorted out stuff with Newcastle, etc., etc. I can't see them letting go of John Murtaugh if they weren't going to have another technical director in charge of what is going to be one of their most important summer transfers, summer transfer windows, particularly with Omar Barada just taking over United as new CEO. He's not going to want to fuck this up. he just can't. This is so important, this summer transfer window. With Murtaugh gone, I cannot see Wilcox and Ashworth not having a very strong say in how things go ahead. But people are saying they're not going to be available until 2025. Maybe that's just to kind of play hardball with Newcastle and make them think United aren't going to pay them what they want. United are hoping to reach an agreement with Southampton on compensation for Wilcox, but I heard they didn't have to pay compensation because Wilcox resigned, therefore he's no longer an employee. But there's all sorts of different information coming out regarding that. Wilcox would report into Ashworth, who's due to replace the outgoing Murtaugh. And Newcastle are demanding 20 million, which is an absolute fucking joke because they only paid Brighton 2 million for him. They're just pissed off that, a club that they thought they might be able to overtake and usurp in their charge of getting towards the top four have now poached someone who was going to be very important to their strategy. So they're just digging their heels in and going, well, we want 20 million. Now, listen, they're entitled to ask for whatever they like, but they're not going to get 20 million quid. United aren't going to pay that. United do want their former midfielder, Darren Fletcher, who was appointed as a technical director at the same time as Murtaugh, to stay amid the shake-up, but there is an acceptance. His current title is an ill-fitting one for his responsibilities, and it will have to be changed in due course. What that means, I don't know, but they're clearly thinking, you're not very good at the job that you have now, but we'd like to keep you around the club. That's what that sounds like, which isn't very complimentary, but, sorry, man. You're not doing what we need you to do in that role, so we're going to fit you somewhere else. And if you don't like it, you can jog on. So Barada is due to formally start work in July after being appointed as CEO. And the team want Barada, Ashworth and Wilcox to spearhead a new football operations team going forward. And they're going to want that ready for this summer. I can't see that not happening. So day-to-day management provided by the likes of Football Director Andy O'Boyle, Director of Football Negotiations Matt Hargreaves, and Director of Football Operations Dave Harrison. So with only a couple of months before the transfer window, they're going to have to get their ducks in a row. With Ten Hag's future remaining uncertain as well, I don't think it matters who the manager is, because I think the players that United want to get will be decided by that team. And whatever manager comes in, as has been described to Ten Hag, you're going to be a coach. You're not going to be the manager. You're going to be a coach. And you'll use whatever players we want to bring in. Yes, you'll have a say. Maybe you'll have a bit of a veto on a couple of players, but we're the ones that make the final decision, not you. His position uncertain, but it looks like Ashworth and Wilcox will have to be brought in very, very quickly now that Murtaugh is departing. And that is the main news headlines for today. As always, thank you very, very much for joining me. If you haven't done so already, please hit that like button and hit subscribe. And please, thoughts in the comments. What do you think of Andre from Bologna? Has anyone watched much of him? Any opinions on him? Would you prefer him or Yao Gomez? Do you think he is the more reliable option because he's done so well for Wolves? And there's a lot going on. Gleison Bremer, does anyone know much about him? Having watched Serie A, I've done a little bit of research on him, and while a decent defender, I think 60 to 70 million for a player like him is just a little bit too much to ask. So as always, thanks again for joining me, and tune in for an episode tomorrow. Don't know whether I'm going to do news or whether I'm going to do a player focus on Gleison Bremer. Still have to decide, but either way, keep an eye out, and I will catch you tomorrow. Cheers.